The first thing you need to do when you're drawing a mouth is connect the corners of the mouth, either literally or just visually. Imagine them connected and see if you identify any sort of tilt when they are connected with a straight line. I notice she doesn't have a great deal of a tilt to her face, but her face is turned slightly, so we have a long side and a short side. That's the next thing you need to observe. Do you have a long side of the mouth or a short side? Or are you drawing someone who's almost like a mug shot, just straight forward? So I'm gonna start by just making little dashes for each corner of the mouth and ignoring everything except where the lips are meeting, where they come together. If I was ignoring everything else and that's the only thing I saw, what should that line look like? How is it behaving? This line behaves in a way that it almost has a disconnect towards the center, just under the Cupid's bow. So I'm going to fragment my line. I'm just going to let it have a little bit of disconnect there. Now that I've mapped out lightly where the lips meet, I'm going to consider the top lip. Where does the top lip end? How far away from that center is it? Where is it tallest? Where is it darkest? I'm trying to just pay attention to one thing at a time and not get overwhelmed by trying to see it all at once. And as I've said many times, once you have one thing drawn, everything else you add comes into submission to that first item. So when I add this bottom lip, I'm comparing it to the top lip because I've already drawn the top lip. And whatever I add has to look right with what I have currently. Now that I have the basic underdrawing established, I start seeing value. I squint my eyes, I kind of blur them, and I notice that the skin around the mouth is lighter than the lips, so I have to drop the mouth in value. I have to just lower it slightly. And I'm gonna spend a lot of time in this dark area of the mouth, the right side where the shadow is, because that's where all my work is. That's what has to be done. My paper's already white, so whatever is white or whatever is really high in value is already done for me. So when you're doing a pencil drawing, your work is in the dark. I know that sounds weird, but it is. Wherever it's dark is where you have the most work to do. And as always, draw light till it's right. So we darken slowly in layers. I know that this is really dark, but I really don't want to just dig into my paper. I want to almost like dust it, like put layers of graphite down. And as it gets lower and lower, I feel a little more secure in how it's shaping up. Sometimes students will say, it doesn't look right. Well, there's only so much depth a mouth can have with 2 or 3 values. So I tell them, the shape looks right, the structure looks right. So you're ready to darken and deepen those values, and you will start seeing it shape up and start deepening those grooves. But do it slowly, do it cautiously. Don't dig into your paper, don't scar it. If you're doing a facial feature study, I recommend giving a little bit of reference to what's around that facial feature. In our case, this mouth, I want to give some attention to the chin, the jaw, the cheeks, the Cupid's bow, the nose. All of those things are important in framing what we perceive the mouth to look like. Without that, it just doesn't have the landmarks for us to recognize whether or not we've gotten a likeness. So yes, it's a mouth study, but I am giving some attention to what's around it. And I'm not going to apologize for that. I think it's a good idea and it's helpful, especially when you're a student and you're learning and you're just beginning. you want it to have a likeness because it's going to validate your hard work and observation. And if you don't do that and you don't have good validation or return on investment, then you're probably not going to keep going in your drawing. You're going to lose steam and you're going to lose motivation. And thank you for watching this far. If you found this advice, this tutorial helpful at all, I would love if you would subscribe and keep watching and keep practicing along with us. I've seen these techniques work time after time, and as I keep teaching, I know that anybody can draw, anybody can improve. I've seen it year after year, so I just have so much confidence in that anybody can get better. It's about improvement, not perfection. And only God Almighty is perfect. Only Christ. So we need to look to Him and say, help us to improve. If it's a hobby for drawing, help us with that. If it's taming our tongue, Lord, help us with that. Whatever it is, we look for improvement. Don't get discouraged because you're always seeking perfection. It's hard on you to do that, and it's very stressful. Okay, back to drawing. We've got to get into this drawing. We've got to deepen those darks, and we've got to slowly commit. So when I say commit, I mean add pressure to areas that are dark with your pencil, but also switch up to a 6B. So instead of using a 2H, you can only get so dark with that. So the 2 P's, the pencil, the pressure. So you need to up that ammo and you need to commit. My little analogy for drawing commitment and getting it darker and darker is like dating. So on the first date, you don't get engaged. You don't get that level of commitment on the first date. You have to put in the time. You have to get to know it. You have to meet its parents. Not really. But in essence, I'm just getting to know this drawing. I don't want to go all out and use my 6B, my 8B, and darken it and scar it. I will regret that, inevitably. So proceed with caution. Be slow to commit. Draw light till it's right. I'm just going to keep on repeating those mantras in my mind to my students because I find that it leads them in a good direction and they get good outcomes. You can see the tools I'm switching between. If I'm shading in really broad areas and trying to keep things kind of soft and light, I'm going to use my tissue. If I'm shading in really small, confined little areas, I use the rule of thumb. If it's smaller than a quarter, I'm going to pick up my blending stick or my blending stump. As long as I have shaded lightly enough, I can actually start drawing with my eraser, this little cap eraser. Or if you have one of those like handy dandy retractable erasers or electric erasers, fine, go for it. We're a public school, so cap erasers do the job for us and get us those little spots that we can pull back up out of the dark. So once you have a dusting, it's like writing your name in a dusty dresser. You can go back with your eraser on that graphite dust and just like lightly brush over it and pick it up. If you squint at the reference and you squint at the drawing, you can tell that some of those light areas, the little area beside the corner of the mouth that's so dark, it almost looks like 2 little mountain peaks turned sideways. So in my mind, I'm nicknaming those kind of like the light mountains and say, okay, it should look like there's almost like a number 3 throughout the corner of her mouth, a number 3 of darkness. Well, we've got a good study established. I'm pleased with it. Is it perfect? No. Is it helping me get better? Yes. That's the question you want to ask yourself. Thank you again for sticking with me, and hopefully you picked up a few tips that you can use when you're drawing next time. And I just hope that you guys have a blessed day and night.